So let's stick with some heartbreaking moments, okay? You guys go 10-6 in 2018. Andrew throws 49 touchdown passes. That year, you guys trade back in the draft. You get Quentin, Darius Leonard, Braden Smith. You're clearly heading places. It's your second year on the job, and then Andrew retires. And, you've talked about this ad nauseum, but the thing that I'm really interested in is over the next couple years, suddenly the most important piece of your plan, what you were building around, is now gone. At any point before this year, were you ever concerned that with the sequence of events that happened, you guys might be left in no man's land a little bit, where you were too good to draft a quarterback, but you didn't have a long-term answer that could get you over the top? Was that ever a concern over the last couple off seasons?
No. I mean, Frank, one beautiful thing about Frank now, he believes he's got great confidence in his coaching ability. That's what I love about him. I mean, he just, whoever we put in the game at quarterback, we're going to find a way to win. That's his mentality. I'd be lying if I sit here and tell you it didn't sting when Andrew retired. Just, we're talking about a top 5 quarterback in the league, and we had finally thought we had got things around him that were going to be really, pretty special. We were going to do some really special things. We ran out of gas in 2018, the 1-5 start. And then, we went on a great run and then beat Tennessee the last game of the year to get in the playoffs, and went to Houston and won a big playoff game versus a division rival. And then just, got beat by a better team in Kansas City and run out of gas. So going into 19 with the entire team coming back, we thought, loaded with draft picks, we thought, man, we got a chance to really set this thing up for long-term success. And then, Andrew retires. And I remember Frank, Jim, and Mr. Irsay and I talking, and kind of all of our message was, we're not going to make an excuse. I mean, there's not going to be an excuse. We're not going to let anybody flinch, during this moment. We're going to keep moving forward. We're going to keep building it the way we know, the right way to build it. We'll try not to make any true panic moves, and keep doing, things the right way, and we'll get to where we want to go. We'll evaluate the quarterback position, each and every year. Philip, we went with Jacoby the one year, and he got unfairly criticized. I mean, Jacoby could have done some things better. I think he would tell you that. But also, I thought he took some unfair criticisms. And then we had the opportunity to sign Philip, and, it was just a unique opportunity. Here's a future Hall of Fame quarterback, and you got the head coach and the offensive coordinator, who both are familiar with him and have been with him and have coached him. So I thought it was a seamless transition last year offensively, because he knew what he was coming into. Now he had to get used to the players and how we did things, and we're dealing with COVID. But that was fun. I mean, that was as funnest season as I've ever been a part of. As hard as it was with COVID, it was as fun of a football season because of Philip. Philip made it fun. Every day was fun for Philip. I've never been around a guy that loves playing more than Philip Rivers. And then we go into this offseason and the opportunity to get Carson, who Frank also is very familiar with. So we weren't going to make an excuse. We were going to continue to turn over every stone. We'll continue to evaluate the draft like we do every year. The funny thing I always think, Robert, is like everybody thinks these just because you take one, I said this at the end of the year, just because you take a quarterback in the first round, don't make it right. The guy's got to be able to play. The pressure that comes with being a first round quarterback or a first round pick in general, the expectations are really high. So you need to be right. And patience, we think our patience will pay off. Carson's a young guy. He's 29 years old. He's got to do things better, and he knows that. He's got to play better. But I think that combination of Frank and Carson together, with Marcus Brady and the pieces we've put around him, I think is going to be a good thing. But saying all that, like until we know, we'll continue to evaluate the position each and every year.
I want to ask you about Carson in a second, but when you were looking at the quarterbacks in this year's draft, did you think this might be a year where you could have made a move in the first round if necessary because it might have been your only route to getting a guy for the future?
No, it's a good question. I think any year you want to get up if you really believe. Like if you believe you're going to get a franchise quarterback, you do whatever it takes. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you're sitting at 32. If you're at 32 and you believe in the guy and you're willing to give up, I mean, what would you give up for Pat Mahomes right now? What would you give up for Aaron Rodgers and when he was a young player? For a superstar quarterback, you really have that conviction. You do whatever it takes to go get him. So I think in not just this year's draft, but any draft, we're going to have the mentality that if there's a guy we like, we would go get him. And there was guys in this draft that we liked, but one thing we did is we compared Carson, coming out to who was in this year's draft. And we thought Carson measured very favorably against them. And he's been in this league and he's performed and he's played at a really high level.
So I'm curious how that conversation unfolded with Carson and about Carson. Did you go to Frank and say, this seems possible? Or did you ask about his interest in Carson before you started trying to go down that road?
Look, I mean, Frank's got one thing Frank does is he builds great relationship with players. So I remember when even in 2018, he would always just compare like, hey, Andrew does this really well, but Carson does this really well. So I had a good indication that he liked him. But after the season, when we started hearing that Carson could be available, we had long discussions about it. And when I started talking to Howie in Philly, we really delved into it. And it wasn't just Frank and I. We have some really good scouts in our building and some really good coaches. Ultimately, Frank and I and Jim made the decision, but we wanted to get their take on what they thought. And look, Carson's got some things he's got to do better. And he's got some work, and he's worked really hard this offseason on him. But I think it's going to be fun to watch this year. I think it's going to be fun to watch Carson and our team come together and play together. It's not like it's always great because everybody just think it's going to be rosy right from the start. But there's always going to be a bumpy road. I mean, there just is. I remember last year with Phillip, like the first 4 or 5 games of the season. The sky is falling. Oh, the sky is falling at all points, and it's a long season. You got to be able to handle that. Carson will handle that because Frank and Marcus and our staff will do a good job handling it.
What do you think is the most important thing Frank said to you? The most important thing Frank said to you about Carson, what he still saw in him that made you feel good about making the move? What's the most important nugget you got from Frank during that process?
I believe in him. It's easy. I believe in him. That's all. I mean, it's hard to, when you've got a coach that as good as Frank is, and I think he's really special. I believe in Carson. Now, we studied it and we saw some things on tape that we thought he could do better, that needed work, but I believe in him. I mean, when your head coach is your offensive, he's running the offense too. He's heavily involved in the quarterback position. When he said I believed in him, then it's hard to argue that. Now, of course, I play devil's advocate at times, but I liked, I'm on board with this too. I like Carson too. Loved him coming out of North Dakota State. Had a connection with his college coach, Craig Bowl, who recruited me in college. So I had a lot of insight to Carson when he was coming out. And then, just my connections in Philly with Howie and Doug and listening to them talk about him through the years. So we knew there was, everybody focuses on the latest negative, but there was sure a lot of positive early in his career. And look, I credit Howie in Philly. It wasn't the easiest deal to get done, but I think at the end of the day, we both worked into getting a deal that was fair for both sides, which is always kind of what I want to get done.
And you have so much faith in Frank and what he's accomplished and what he is as a play caller and a coach, and I know that. What would you say you've come to appreciate working with him up close that other people probably can't really understand from afar?
He's got tremendous conviction in his belief as a coach. All right. And sometimes I didn't always come across because he's so humble. He's such a humble servant. He's a tremendous leader. He's got great presence, but it's his conviction. I mean, he has got unbelievable conviction. I mean, even the first off season that he was, that we were together, it was funny because he goes, Chris, we're gonna win 10 games, and I'm coming off 4-win season, and I'm like, holy crap, Frank, man, we're about to start with about 4 or 5 rookies here. We got a lot of work to do. Andrew, we're still trying to figure out if Andrew's shoulder's going to be right. So that's just him, though. I mean, that's just Frank.